let's get real. I am so glad to have on our show today Eileen Wyner. She is a nurse practitioner at the Beth Israel Hospital in Boston, Massachusetts, and she has a personal and a professional interest in health and wellness. Let's hear what she has to say. Eileen, we've known each other for a long time.
Yes,
we worked together at Massachusetts General Hospital for years and years. We co-wrote a Harvard Health blog post about incorporating physical activity into cancer treatments. And you have a lot to say about this. I want to hear your story.
Well, thank you very much for asking me to come. I'm really happy to talk to you and to share what I've learned in the last few years. In 2014, in the spring of 2014, I was diagnosed with an aggressive form of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And I had 6 chemo treatments in a 4-month span. I was fortunate I didn't have to have any radiation, and I'm very fortunate because it was a very successful course. The problem was all of the side effects from the chemotherapy. I was very weak. I had a couple of infections. I had hospitalizations. I had a hard time eating, and I was frequently dehydrated. So I didn't have a whole lot of energy. I was able to get up and around and take care of myself and make my cup of tea and do little things like that. But I wasn't really physically active. I wasn't doing any kind of exercise. I really wasn't able to do anything. When I finished my course of treatment and it was time to get back to work and get back to life, which I was really thrilled to do, I remember my doctor saying, you know, in about a month you're going to feel like yourself and you're going to be up and going and this is going to be great. Everything's going to be great. And it didn't really happen that way because it really took a lot longer than a month. And I had been pretty healthy and in pretty good shape prior to getting sick. I was very active, always doing something, maybe not a regular gym routine, but always very, very, very active. But this just really zapped everything that I had. Yeah. And I realized how weak I was and how much rehabilitation that I needed to think about when I was home one day. And I decided that I needed to get something out of this bottom cabinet, which was near where I was sitting. And it had photo albums, and I knew exactly what I wanted and what I was going to do. So I just sort of reached down off the chair, and I couldn't quite reach the cabinet, so I just kind of slid off the chair and got down on the floor, took out the books that I wanted, put them in one arm, and went to get up off the floor. Yeah. I couldn't get up off the floor.
Wow.
I couldn't get myself up the floor. And I sat there for a couple of seconds and I couldn't really figure it out, and I put the books down and I moved a few things around, but I didn't have the strength in my arms and my hands and my shoulders, any upper body strength, to just kind of push off the floor like we do all the time, take my books and go about my business. But I was very, very fortunate that my husband was working from home, and I hollered out for him, and he came down the hall, no big urgency, and there I was kind of sitting there like, all these books around me looking like a child. And I said, I can't get up. And he just looked at me and I go, I really can't get up. And he had to help me get up off the floor, and he really had to use some force and a little pulling because I just couldn't get myself up. Wow. And that's when I realized that I had some troubles. So I started doing some little exercises at home. I had some weights, and I started using 3-pound hand weights. And I did some things with weights, and I started to increase my walking. And as my strength got better, I was lucky enough to get hooked up with a personal trainer that one of my sister-in-laws was able to find for me from her gym. So I had someone that could come to the house and help me with all of the exercises that I had to do. And it was just so important to have her teach me how to do things and to help her to really encourage me in what I was doing. And I realized that pretty soon I was walking for longer periods of time outside. When I took a shower, instead of being so exhausted that I would come out and I'd be saying, I'm really glad that I don't have any hair because I'm too tired to wash it. I mean, I could only do so much to back to being in the shower all the time and having the water running until it was cold, and that wasn't very fair to my husband. But I was really glad to finally get to that point. But it was some of these everyday simple things that I just wasn't able to do anymore. And then as I was able to build, her activity helped my activity so much, and she was just so patient with me. It was just a really, really important part of getting better.
So you realized that you had no upper body strength in a really scary way. I mean, you were stuck on the ground.
Yep.
And your husband had to do full assist, help you up.
Yep.
And then you sort of started off your own rehab, coming up with your own easy exercises to get your strength back.
Before I was able to even get to the point that I was able to use these 3-pound weights, it was just simply doing the exercises of just doing some bicep curls and just using my arms.
Just your own
just to use my own body weight to make sure that I was able to do it, that I had form, that something didn't hurt. And then there was the idea of being able to add back, for me being able to go back and use my weights, but I got to thinking about what other people might be able to do at home as well if you don't have weights hanging around. You don't have to run out and buy them. You can do simple things like using soup cans.
And we can demonstrate this. It's nothing complicated. It's really easy stuff. Right? These are 15-ounce soup cans. These are cheap. They're also healthy things with no added salt. So simple. Show me what kinds of things that you would do.
So some of the things that you can do are just doing bicep curls, where you can do 2 arms together. You can do 1 at a time if you're not sure about how strong you can be. The other thing you can try doing is just holding your hands out and just raising up and down, holding straight, and just raising up and down.
Nothing. If you have like very little strength, you can just do nothing in your hands at all.
Just use your hands. Yeah. You can use things out the side such a way so that you can start to feel your shoulders. When you're feeling better, you can go to higher cans, or you have a higher can here.
Of course. I brought the 25-ounce.
So, which actually really does give you some resistance. So this is a good thing you can do.
Yeah, could use that now. Yeah.
You could also just use this for over the head things. So just trying to hold your elbows close to your head and just be moving in such a fashion.
Like the triceps.
Because you can use all of your tricep muscles, and it also helps with your shoulders quite a bit too.
Yeah. And these are all seated exercises. You could just be on your couch, be comfortable, and be doing these things.
Right. You don't have to be doing anything fancy. You don't have to have a weight bench. You don't have to have a special chair. You can just use what you really have in your household.
Yeah, and I was thinking this would be really nice because you can fill this with as much water as you want to lift. So it's very adjustable. It's like the cheapest adjustable weight ever
that you can have. And it's taking what you have at home. Everybody has something that resembles a can nowadays, and probably everybody has something that resembles a water bottle, and that you can just have that fit into what you're able to do, and then you can increase over time.
And one of the things that I like to use, I take these sometimes when I'm traveling. This is another just easy, cheap way to get a little bit of exercise. These are resistance bands. Really simple, but wow. If you try pulling one of these medium thickness resistance bands, it's not easy. This is actually kind of hard, guys, and there's a lot of different exercises people can do, including these very simple biceps types curls. And there's a whole, actually, if you go on the internet, there's tons and tons of exercises that you can do, and I should write a post about this. But simple, roll up, they travel well, cheap,
and they always work.
And they always work. And you can't really injure yourself. They're very safe. So, Eileen, you faced another serious health challenge after recovering from lymphoma. And this one, you told me, was almost more challenging. Tell us about this.
So, on Valentine's Day 2019, I was walking in really great boots, crossing the light in a crosswalk with the light in my favor, when the tip of my boot hit a patch of black ice, and I slid backwards, and my right ankle went in a very unnatural position. And in the split second that I was down on the ice, I said, "Oh, I think I broke my ankle." And then I turned my head to the right, and I realized that the traffic light had changed. So as I turned my head to the right, I saw the traffic coming in my direction.
This is really scary. What happened?
Nobody stopped. Nobody stopped while I was in the crosswalk. They just slowed down enough, and they just drove around me and proceeded to take the light and go about their business.
So you're lying in the road.
I was in the crosswalk.
You're in the road, and people are going around you. They're not stopping to say, "Hey, lady, are you okay?"
Nobody stopped. Nobody stopped. And this very lovely woman and her dog were on the other side of an ice bank, and they were wonderful. She grabbed the bottom of my coat and kind of slid me over some, and I was able to stand up. I had great boots, and I knew that even though I was in trouble, I didn't have that serious a level fracture, that we were able to get over the bank, and she helped me sit down. And I actually called my husband to come and get me, and ended up in the emergency room where they told me I had a fracture of my fibula, which is a lower leg bone on the outside of your leg that attaches to the top of your ankle. And I was very fortunate that I didn't need any surgery, and I just thought that I would be all better in no time flat because I didn't need surgery. And they gave me this nice orthopedic walking boot to wear, and I knew that I was going to be able to walk and this was going to be great. And none of that happened.
Yeah.
None of that happened. It was a very long recovery. It was 6 weeks in the boot, 24/7. Unable to really walk when I got my full instructions, except if I really had to. And he said to me, I remember my orthopedic surgeon said, you can get up and go to the bathroom, and if the house is on fire, you can leave the house. But other than that, you really should just sit for these 6 weeks and let everything heal.
Wow.
And I said, well, what am I going to do? I can't just sit for 6 weeks. And I already knew what I'd been through and what had happened when I sat for all those months when I was recovering from chemotherapy. And he said, when this boot comes off, you're going to be able to walk. He said, it's going to be easy. He said, you don't have to worry about it. And I had some serious doubts.
Yeah.
So I actually got in touch with a physical therapist that I had seen in the past and explained to him what had happened and said, I know I don't need any therapy, I can't do any therapy now, but I said I'm going to need to, and this is my tentative deboot date, and I want to see you right away. So 6 weeks later, the boot came off, and I went to physical therapy the next morning at 9 a.m.
Nice. You had set that up ahead of time?
I set that up ahead of time. I just said, I know I'm going to need this. What I didn't know was how badly I was going to need physical therapy, because that boot is heavy. And you can't sleep well, you can't roll over. You have a really hard time balancing yourself, and you have to put all your weight on your good side.
You get uneven.
You're very uneven, and you're hanging onto a cane, and you're really leaning on that cane. And very soon after, my neck went, my shoulder went a little bit, my wrist really hurt from hanging onto the cane. My entire left side hurt more than my broken right side.
Ankle.
And it was just really hard to find any comfort. You had to lay on your back when you're sleeping at night, which is, for me, miserable. Sitting at a chair was really hard because it's just so heavy. There's no place to put yourself comfortably. So you're really stuck. I was on the sofa most of the time, or sitting on the sofa and then having a hassock underneath my leg. And then your back goes because you can't really sit.
You're doing
kind of scrunching. And because you're just trying to support yourself. And, quite frankly, you're miserable as well. So everything about it. By then it's the dead of winter and you're stuck. And I had a lot of things planned and I couldn't do anything. So I was a little pathetic. But the reason I found this in some ways much harder to deal with than dealing with chemotherapy, which might sound really strange because one is far more serious than the other, is that when I was getting chemo, I could still get up and make a cup of tea when I wanted it. With this, I couldn't, because I couldn't get up. I couldn't manage the cup of tea and carry it back. I just couldn't. So everything that I needed to have done, someone had to do for me. And that someone was my husband, who has done more than a lot of things for me through these last years that I am so lucky to have. And he's working at home now. He gets a big medal. He gets to work at home now, and I think actually some days he would have liked to have taken the train and go into the office just to, I wouldn't have blamed him if he wanted to do that. But the biggest issue is not being able to get around and take care of yourself. You've dropped something, it has to stay on the floor until someone got it for you. You just couldn't bend over to get it. You just didn't have the balance. You just couldn't do it. So it was a really, really frustrating time. Now, I knew that I was going to get out of shape, and I was thinking, I really did try for a period of time to work with doing some hand weights and trying to do things, because I'd really gotten myself into pretty good health and pretty good shape after what had happened before. But the problem was that I really couldn't do these things as well because this side would hurt, and I couldn't really lift because my neck was out, and I couldn't really sit well. So if I tried to do something, I wasn't using the right body mechanics. I was actually doing more harm than good. So when I went to physical therapy, And they did all of these tests to see what I needed to do and what I could do and couldn't do. Basically, my physical therapist looked at me and he said, "You can't do any of these things, can you?"
Ooh.
And I couldn't. I couldn't stand easily. I couldn't balance easily. I didn't have any flexion in my foot. Wow. And yeah, so we really had to start from scratch, and we had to go very, very slowly, because he also had to put the good side back into shape too, so everything would be aligned properly, and I would be able to get around.
So how much physical therapy did it take to get you back to your baseline?
So I went to physical therapy 2 to 3 times a week for pretty solid 8 months.
8 months.
And I still have outstanding appointments, and I still check in.
Wow. And this is the orthopedic surgeon telling you, you're going to be fine, the boot's going to come off in 6 weeks,
and you're going to be
back to normal, no problem. Didn't even recommend physical therapy.
He said, "You certainly can go if you want to go," but he said, "I don't think you're going to need it. You know, most people can just head off and walk." I think what a lot of people don't understand is that with the boot, that the fracture healed very nicely, very quickly, very well. But you have all these surrounding ligaments and tendons and muscles that are all around your ankle, and the boot has you frozen in such a way that you lose a lot of motion in your foot because of what happens to these ligaments and tendons and muscles. There's some thinking that my healing took a really long time because of all of the chemotherapy that I had. And one of the medicines in the chemotherapy was a steroid, prednisone. And high doses of that over time can dry up the fluid that we have around our joints and our ligaments, which is probably part of what happened to me, which is why things were so stiff.
And can cause some muscle weakness as well, so it took a lot to come back from that.
To be able to use everything and get back to where I was.
So you have professional training and education and personal experience now. And what advice do you give patients for some easy exercises that they can do to keep their balance and strength up at baseline? Like, because ankle injuries and lower extremity injuries are so common. Anybody can sprain their ankle. Everybody sprains their ankle.
Right.
And foot fractures are so common as well. Leg fractures. What are some things that we can be doing just to make sure that we're in good shape, so that if we head into a challenge like this, we're going to be the better for it?
I think thinking about where you're at before you fall, before you have your injury, if you know that you're in pretty good shape, then that will help you to get to that next level. But even if you're not, even if you're someone that's somewhat frail or just not used to doing things, simple things that you can do around your house are going to make a huge difference, like just getting in and out of a chair without holding on. So if you're just holding, you just put your feet flat on the ground. Sit with your tush a little bit towards the edge, but not quite to the edge. And just, you can either leave your arms free flowing, you can put them on your thighs, whatever, and you just want to be able to get up and stand for a second, push your tush back a little bit, and sit down.
So we're literally just standing
up
and sitting down and doing that as many times as we can.
You know, you always start with thinking about doing things in 5s, 10s, and 15s. So you just start doing that as much as you can. But keep your feet good and flat. Make sure you feel good and steady. You know, you might only be able to do a few at first. And when you first start doing it, you might need to hang on to that side of the chair a little bit to get up. But your goal is to be able to get in and out of a chair, any kind of a chair, a big chair, a little chair, soft chair, by just getting yourself up and then sitting down slowly.
And this is actually an office test of strength for anybody really, but often for elderly patients. We just ask them if they can get up out of a chair without using their arms. And it's amazing, a lot of people cannot do that. It's hard. If you think about it, this is a modified squat.
Right.
This is not you're just taking a little break in the middle there. That's
what you're going to do. Now, if you get really good at this, you can add one of the cans, and you can hold the can and use that for some added weight while you're getting up and down. Thank you. And just hang on to that and do the same motion. That's just giving you a little bit more resistance.
Up and down.
And you can increase that weight as much as you can over time. So that would be one thing that you can really do.
And again, something that people can do when they're watching television. Instead of just sitting,
you don't have to
easy
think
enough.
about it.
No equipment necessary, just up and down.
You don't have to have fancy clothes. You don't have to have expensive sneakers. You don't have to have the newest gym bag and water bottle. You just have to have a couple of cans of something and a chair. Pretty easy.
What else can we do?
So some of the other things that I found very challenging, and as he explained them to me, realized that I had never really thought of them like this, even when I was talking to patients, was just being able to balance yourself, just thinking about balancing.
This is the physical therapist.
So physical therapy, yes, my physical therapist. So the first thing to think about is just when you're standing up, is just see how well, and always have something nearby to hang on to in case you do lose your balance or you're just not strong enough yet. So the idea is just standing on one foot.
Yeah.
You don't have to lift one foot up really, really high. You just need to stand on one foot for as long as you can. Try and do that on both sides for as long as you can. I still wobble. All these months later, I still wobble. But you want to be able to do that frequently, and you want to think about it when you are standing at the bus stop waiting for the train, when you're in the supermarket and you're waiting, to get your groceries taken care of. You just want to just hold up, even if it's just for a few seconds at a time, and build up. Ultimately, you want to be able to do 30 seconds on each side. That would be considered a really full set. And when you start, you're probably going to have to hang on, and you're still going to feel a little wobbly. I did for a long time, and that's perfectly fine, because eventually you're going to be able to do that one on your own. The other thing to think about would be doing calf raises or standing on your toes. And that can be tricky for some people as well too. Hang on if you have to. You want to start by just bringing yourself up on your toes.
Okay.
And you can do upwards of 10 to 20 at a time, depending on how strong you are. So you want to be able to do both feet. Then you want to be able to do one foot at a time. Again, you may have to hold on for a little bit and just do that toe raise.
That could be hard for a lot of people.
That's very, very hard. It's very, very hard.
There's strength and balance involved.
And eventually you want to be able to do it without holding on. And that's not so...
fall over.
That's not so easy. Yeah. But again, these are things that you can do when you're waiting for the train. If you're feeling that your balance is good enough, you can do it without having something to hang on to. In the grocery store, you're doing the dishes or cutting up vegetables, you can stand on one foot.
Doing something over here and just balancing. Yeah.
And then you want to try and do everything for a 10 count. If you can only do it for a little bit, at least you're doing some of it, because everything you do through the day is cumulative and it's going to add up, and by the end of the day you're going to have knocked off 20 or 30 of these at a time, and that will work out really, really well. Every
little bit counts.
Right. Every single thing that you do throughout the day adds to how strong you can be and how your everyday activity can help you when things happen, because things happen.
Yeah. And now if I wanted to do something a little more challenging, like let's say I got really good at balancing, what's something else I could do that's like a little more challenging?
So you can use a pillow.
Just a regular
pillow. It doesn't have to be really deep.
Yeah.
I'm going to kick off a shoe for that. And you will realize when you stand up on this that this is pretty wobbly.
That's hard.
And it's hard.
Yes.
And it's hard even, I couldn't do it at all. But even now, this is a difficult one. And what that helps to do is you have to realize when you're outside and you're walking around and you're running for the train or you're in the grocery store, the ground isn't smooth like it might be at home. There's going to be something somewhere, and you have to be able to learn to negotiate that. And it's really hard. We were recently away, and we were walking on a very, very rocky beach. And I had my heavy-duty LL Bean boots. And it was still difficult. And a year ago, that part wouldn't have been difficult. It's always hard to walk on rocks, but it was a little bit harder for me. So that's why something like this is really important.
Good practice.
Good practice.
There's always going to be uneven terrain somewhere.
Right. Yeah. In the backyard, if you go out to do leaves, there's acorns everywhere.
Yeah.
If you're around kids, there's Legos on the floor.
Oh, we know about that.
So there's always something. And you have to be able to try and maintain your balance. You will wiggle some when you're on the pillow, and that's okay. But the idea is, can you still keep your balance while you're doing that?
Yeah. Yeah, and you could do this just for a little bit of time every day.
Right.
And that's cumulative.
Right.
So again, I went to a conference recently and was standing in the back just to stretch out my legs, and I would just stand on one foot and then the other foot sort of unobtrusively, and I started doing some calf raises, and the conference is going on, all these people are sitting, but I'm back there kind of doing my thing.
Yeah, you have to stretch yourself out a little bit. You can't sit all day.
It felt great, and the next day my calves were sore. I realized I even got like a little bit of a workout, and that would have just been sitting time otherwise,
Everything gets shortened when you sit for a long time. That's really what happens. All your ligaments, particularly in your lower back and around your hip region, if you're sitting for a really long time, they get short. And so when you start to stand up again, your posture isn't so good. You know, I never really thought much about that until I really realized that I was really bent over because I had been sitting for so long and had, you know, 2 bouts of a lot of sitting.
Yeah. Well,
So-
and it sounds like you have an amazing physical therapist.
I do. Can I say?
Please,
Okay.
yes.
So I go to Beantown Physio. They have 2 offices. I work with the office that's in West Roxbury because it's near my house, and they have just done a fabulous job. And I would have to say I highly recommend them for people. I've worked with them for many, many years, and I am very fortunate. And I have a wonderful trainer at the Jewish Community Center when I went back to the gym, Deborah Selleck, who has worked tirelessly with me getting to do things. And you know that my big goal now, my big thing, is to be able to do push-ups on the floor. This is
Wow.
what I'm striving for. And the reason I can't do push-ups on the floor is because my ankle doesn't work right. I don't have full flexion and extension of my ankle. It gets stuck. So I get into the right position and I can maybe do a couple, and then all of a sudden my leg or my foot goes, and then I lose my form. So I can't do them completely on the floor. So this is what we're working for now.
So the PT is ongoing, and you have new goals. Always reaching for
Right.
something new and
Right.
something beyond something a little more challenging.
Right.
Good for you.
So that's my big thing. I can't run. That won't be a big exercise for me to go back to. But certainly if I can start with doing that, and then I'm a huge walker, and just be able to speed that up some, or maybe try a rowing machine. But really the big thing now is being able to do the push-ups. No girly push-ups. I want to do the real thing.
Good for you.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
I'll let you know.
And so your personal experience really is going to help your patients, because you're going to be
hope so.
able to advise them, or you are able to advise them, not only based on like your education, but also based on what you've gone through. Like you know, and I think that's so meaningful.
I had wonderful providers through all of my adventures in illness, and forever grateful because they saved my life. But nowhere along the line did anyone say to me, maybe some physical therapy, or you know, maybe it'll take a little longer, or that wasn't, it just wasn't what I heard.
It's something you just realized and discovered and experienced, but that's changing. And you know, we had written about this. There are now oncology organizations and guidelines that are recommending as best practice that patients going through cancer treatment should have physical activity recommended to them, or should be referred to physical therapists or physiatrists with experience in cancer treatment. Like, that's now a best practice.
And to get a home program, because it's true that when you're going through chemo, you're so immunosuppressed, you can't be around a lot of people. So going to a gym class or going to a PT class probably isn't a good idea, but maybe somebody can consult with you when you're in the hospital for chemo, and you know, you're there the whole day. Maybe somebody can come by and show you a few things, and then when you're home, you can implement some of these things. You know, there'll be a time perhaps that you'll just be too ill to do anything, but hopefully, at least at the early stages, that's not the case. I mean, I was 3 months in before I started to feel ill, so you can, again, that 3 months, if I had been more active, perhaps that may have made, I don't know if it would have made it any easier for me, but I think that I always think about that now for people, that trying to be as active as possible, doing simple things like this, which are really not that simple and are really, really important.
Simple but not easy.
Simple but not easy.
Exactly.
And they have huge value.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that we need to really teach people, and I hope that that's what I'll be able to do.
Yeah.
And I'll always tell them when they have a boot that it's not going to be that easy when it comes off, and that it's much heavier. So that's what I've learned.
So thank you so much. You know, I think the major message is that every little bit counts, and this is really about our health. This is about our health. This is not about aesthetics. This is about like being and feeling very good and as healthy as we can be. So thank you so much for your expertise today.
Thank you for asking.
Yay!
Yay, we did it.
Yay!